All right. Welcome back to the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here is Ben the Jet Retz. Ben, how are you feeling?
I'm doing great, buddy. How are you?
I'm holding on. There's gonna be a lot of coping in this episode, so brace yourself. It's gonna be great. So before we get started, we are on YouTube. If you didn't catch our episode last week, that was the first episode we dropped. It was a preview into this fun matchup that we had. And you will be able to find us there as well as all of the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, all those if you'd like. So we're just letting you guys know we're on there so you can see us and comment with us and, go along for the ride. So without further ado, we got a lot to talk about today, Ben. But today we got to talk about what's on everyone's mind. The NBA in-season tournament with the Sacramento Kings and the New Orleans Pelicans playing, right? How are we feeling about that?
Yeah, for sure. Super pumped about that. But aren't you missing something?
What are you talking about?
I think didn't the Niners like obliterate the Eagles yesterday?
No, we're not talking. No, we don't want to talk about.
Oh,
okay. Okay. No. But okay. With that being said, yes, like Ben said, the Eagles and the Niners played last night in the marquee game. That never happened. So the Niners came out and just stomped on the Eagles at home. So Ben, you're the victor in the first ever Behind the Back podcast matchup between our two teams. So I'm gonna let you set the stage. How are you feeling? What do you want to start with from the game?
Honestly, so my initial thoughts after the game were like I knew we were going to win that game. I had a strong feeling going in, hence why I said 35-24 is my final score. However, I wasn't expecting that dominating of a win. Like, it was definitely a top showing for the Niners, and the Eagles, it looked like they were tired, simple as that. They played some exhausting games back to back to back.
Yeah.
It was just one of those weeks where they were due for that loss, kind of like what we were talking about, and it showed. I mean, simple as that.
Yeah, I agree. And the starting off the game started off well. The Eagles were able to move the ball, but they weren't able to capitalize in the red zone. And that set the stage moving forward because they were able to get the pressure, coming out fresh, the hype right out of the gate. The Eagles were the ones setting the tone to start, but the Niners were able to hold strong until their offense figured everything out. And then they did something that hasn't happened since 2000, where they scored on their next 6 possessions, and that just blew the game wide open. And we'll go into it a little bit more, but there are definitely a couple moments in this game where I just felt like, dang, had we had this, had we had that, maybe we could have made it a closer game. Maybe the momentum would have switched a little bit, missed opportunities on the Eagles for defense. But I think the biggest issue for, what this showed for both teams, obviously the Niners now have established the fact that they can beat anybody, anytime, anywhere, very much how like the Eagles did when they played the Chiefs. They gave that statement to them where they can beat anyone, anytime, anywhere, and firmly established yourselves as, right now, Super Bowl favorites because you beat the team that was Super Bowl favorites. So for the Eagles, it just showed, I don't know if it was so much like they got exposed so much as we got shown what we already knew, and that this defense is old and they struggled to keep up with the athletes that the Niners were, dishing out there. It looked fine at times, but the Niners figured it out, and the Eagles were just instead of daring Brock they cut off his distance, right? Like his air yards. Brock threw like the second lowest air yards per attempt that he had this season, or something like 6 yards versus the 9 that he had been averaging. So the Eagles are saying, hey, we're going to take your dink and dunk stuff. We're going to try to make you do that, and we'll try to finish the plays. And that was the issue. We couldn't finish the plays. So when did you think that you really noticed the switch in the offense here?
It was actually really early on. It was the first completion. If you're talking about in this game, it was the first completion to Brandon Ayuk that we had after the 2 3 and outs. We up to that point, we hadn't been able to move the ball, and then we got backed up to, it was like our own like 9 or something like that.
After the penalty, yeah.
Yep, after the penalty, and it was, I think, first or second down, and Brock finds Brandon Ayuk, and Brandon goes up, 3 yards after the catch, and then makes it a 3rd and short. And I was like, okay, if we get this first down, like we're in the game. And then they got the first down, and then they kept marching and marching, and it was first down, touchdown, CMC. And it was beautiful. I was like 7-6. And at that point, I was thinking, I was like, this game is not over, but definitely you sense that momentum shift in the sense that the Eagles are yet to punch the ball into the end zone, and they've had 2 great opportunities to do that. And the Niners in both areas, in both situations, showed up and said, we'll bend, but we're not going to break. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to break through our defense. You will bend us to our almost breaking point, but we're not going to let you in. And that's that's that resilience that the Niners have been showing in every level of their defense since getting Chase Young. It was exactly what I expected them to do in this game. So from a defensive perspective, it was really promising. So to see us go down the field, such a long field, in as short a time as we did, it wasn't like, 3 minutes or anything like that, but it didn't feel like an elongated drive. And to be able to march down with relative ease, it felt like we were going to be able to do that again. Obviously, they went down 5 times more in a row after that and scored a touchdown. So,
yeah, and there were opportunities again for the Eagles to take back momentum. Again, being the negative kind of person that I am when I watch these games, it's part of my process. When the Niners went up 14-6 going into half, I was like, that's it. Like, the Niners are too good of a team to bounce back from in that regard. And when the Eagles, so we'll talk about the moment that drew everybody's attention was when Dre Greenlaw got into it with the Eagles head of security, Dom. And this came after he aggressively threw down Devontae Smith when he didn't have to, after the play was basically already dead. And it led to the ejection of Dre Greenlaw and Dom, the head security guy. I don't know his last name, but got the whole city riled up. Everyone was riled up, and the Eagles, capitalized on the 30 yards worth of penalties and were actually able to push it in via the tush push, make it 21-13. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, if we're going to try and change momentum, it has to be now defensively. And on that drive, the play that got away from me was that almost interception by Reed Blankenship. Now, that's a tough play to make. Brandon Ayuk's hands were on it as well. So I can't just say it was a dropped interception, but had it went our way, that could have swung momentum at least a little bit, gave the Eagles a little bit more time to hold possession. That was a big one to me. And great shout out to Kyle Shanahan, because he adjusted so well and he neutralized the Eagles' pressure that was getting to Brock on those first 2 possessions. And the best notice of this was when they almost faked the one that George Kittle had, where he had those huge yards after catch, where Hassan was coming in, Kittle gives him a little block, and then nobody picks him up. Yep. Because Hassan just decides to go instead of dropping, and then Kittle's just wide open. And that kind of set the stage for how to attack the Eagles offense moving forward. Obviously, Debo had a few just awesome plays where no one could bring him down. The screen play went really well. And then he had the slant that he just took to the house after Nicholas Morrow just bounced off him. Like, Debo Samuel came and backed up all that talk that he had coming in. And that's what players players on these kind of teams do that. And it just shows that for people want to criticize Debo as being a gadget player, a part of the system. He's like the system wide receiver just as much as Brock is the system quarterback in other people's opinion, because Brandon Ayuk is technically the more, I wouldn't say talented, but skilled oriented receiver, versus Debo is just I'm going to bruise right through. And it just showed against a team that coming into this game was actually second best at yards per, after to stopping yak yards. The Eagles were doing a really good job wrapping teams up this year, but no team is the Niners with their physicality. And so there's a lot to unpack with just how well everything went. So let's start with, before we go into bits and pieces of this game, I want to talk to you about something that we brought up. Let's talk about the MVP conversation. So the talk is Brock Purdy the MVP after this game, or at least the front runner? Because it's at this stage, especially after Mahomes lost over the weekend as well, it's Brock and Dak Prescott. So
yep.
Now the argument here is people are also mentioning, hey, is Christian McCaffrey also considered for the MVP? And I want your opinion on this. I know where you're going to go with this, but I'm curious to think, just have you thought of both sides of the coin with, when you look at the way Brock played, he had over the team had over 200 yards of yak yards, because the Eagles just couldn't tackle anybody. But that's also, for a quarterback, it's a product of taking what you're given. So what was your opinion of Brock in this game? And also CMC, how would you view this MVP conversation?
So the MVP conversation really, it sounds biased, but in my opinion, Brock and CMC are both top 3 candidates for MVP right now. And I will argue that CMC is probably more in terms of, if you break down what MVP stands for, most valuable player, right? What CMC brings to the table on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis, he proves to be the more valuable player to the 49ers and to any league. If you think about it, you can't necessarily throw Brock in any system in the league and succeed the way that Brock is succeeding and that team is succeeding, right? If you throw a CMC at any team in this league, I don't care what team you're throwing him at, you can throw him back on the Panthers. He's going to get them single-handedly probably 2 or 3 more wins, right? So that's the level of MVP status that CMC's at. Like, he probably is the true MVP. Now, if we look at how the MVP is broken down from a league standpoint and how they've always, awarded this status, first of all, like 90+% of the time, it's a quarterback.
Right.
Second of all, it's statistically based. It's not based on a story. It's not based on the guys around him. It's based on this quarterback having this many have this, amount of stats and playing winning football. So if we take out the fact that Brock Purdy is the most underpaid quarterback in NFL history right now because he was Mr. Irrelevant, and we take away the fact that that he has all these different weapons on his team that he's throwing to at any given time, and also, having that running game of CMC. If you take all that away and you just look at him statistically, he's an MVP. Like, I look at the last 10 MVPs from Lamar Jackson, Patty Mahomes, Brady was in there. Like, I think even Peyton Manning was in there. I think he was 10 years ago almost now. When I look at their Rodgers, absolutely, yeah. When I look at their stats, Brock's well on his way to having those stats worthy of MVP level. So what I'm confused on is, why are we not giving Brock those flowers when everybody else gives those flowers to other quarterbacks? Like, I got one more thing on this too, and I'm a little heated about it because I feel like I'm playing on a broken record here. Okay, Jalen Hurts, great quarterback. He is playing behind a Hall of Fame level offensive line. Did you see how much time that man had to throw the ball during this game against a defensive line that is arguably the most dominant in the league? It is arguable between our two teams and Dallas. Like, it's the NFC at this point, but dominant defensive line, and yet that Hall of Fame level offensive line was holding our pressure all the entire game.
Yeah, they did a great job. Yeah, all the sacks that came was from Jalen. Like, he held it way too long.
So then it comes down to his receiving core. His receiving core has been phenomenal as well. A.J. Brown, on broken plays, is a dog. On a broken route, he comes back to his quarterback. He finds the open space. He gives his quarterback, Jalen Hurts, an option to throw to at any given time. Okay, Devontae Smith will make pretty much any damn catch you throw at him.
Like, he made some good running. He was able to. He makes physical plays too, no matter his size.
Absolutely, he broke many tackles this season and in this game too. Like, he's a dog. So that receiving core, awesome. Dallas Goedert, when he's in and healthy, awesome. So what I'm confused on is, why are we overlooking those things that Jalen Hurts have, and then we look over the other things that Dak Prescott has, but when it comes to Brock Purdy, oh, no, Brock Purdy's not that good. He's just got all these weapons and all these things going for him.
Yeah. I know, and that's the hard part about so when people want to view, like, the quarterback, when they're evaluating, like, Brock specifically, and then you have someone of equal talent, like, okay, so here's a good comparison. So Brock and CMC, is almost kind of like, in terms of how they're viewing it, is almost like how people view Tua and Tyreek. They're like, Tyreek is what makes Tua look so awesome because he's a one-of-a-kind level talent for the one-of-a-kind system that works so well with Mike McDaniel, all that fun stuff. So there's just as much of an argument when you look at Miami, like who really is the MVP of that team, who is more valuable to that team. There would be a good percentage that would say Tyreek. Now, for this situation though, with CMC as a running back, and don't get me wrong, I love CMC, but like when you watch this game, I don't understand why you don't give credit to the quarterback in this instance. It's really kind of hard for, like, people view not giving CMC flowers as like propping up Brock but taking down CMC, but I just don't see that being the case. I think CMC gets all the recognition he deserves, and I think that's also why they have the Offensive Player of the Year award for those instances where you guys might be in the position where you win MVP and Offensive Player of the Year this year. So I don't know. I don't know why they keep doing this to him, and I think he has a better argument than Dak, because even if him and Dak, like, Brock Purdy has the better numbers technically, but even if him and Dak had the same exact numbers, you guys have beaten way better teams than the Cowboys have. So like that should matter a bit in the quality of the opponents that you're facing too.
They don't care about that though.
Yeah, and not for Brock, not for Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, and so for me, like, great question you bring to the table. For me, it's been a broken record all season long. I've been doing nothing but defend Brock on and off this podcast and saying that he is a top quarterback in this league. And I stand on that hill. I will die on that hill. I don't care, because what Brock brings to the table is something that no quarterback in Shanahan's system has been able to provide. And that should be a huge eye-opener, because Kyle Shanahan, you talk to any player who's ever been a part of his offensive scheme, they'll tell you it's one of the most complicated, constantly moving, so many ins and outs and so many levels to his offense. It's such a hard system to run and to operate at such a level. And Brock is doing it almost perfectly. They've gone over 30 points in every game except for one that they weren't healthy. But like, Brock has been that guy for us. And like yesterday, there was a tweet from, I'm going to pull it up because this was a really good tweet from David Lombardi, actually. And he said, let me see him. Let me pull it up here. So David Lombardi tweeted, he said, Brock Purdy's throw to Christian McCaffrey was one of the highest level connections we've seen in the NFL this season. CMC and Purdy actually huddled on the sideline before the drive to make a route adjustment on the fly. Purdy released the ball far before McCaffrey was out of his break. Right there, that's something that even veteran quarterbacks in this league struggle to do. And that's understanding the defense that's being thrown at you, making an on-the-fly adjustment, and then executing it to 100% perfection. Now, that play was awesome. That was, I believe, a third down scenario. Christian McCaffrey broke loose, and it was a beautiful ball once again. And last week, the ball between 4 defenders to Brandon Ayuk for a touchdown. Like, he just continues to make winning plays, and the league is not giving him credit. Fans are not giving him credit. Maybe it's because he's going to your favorite city against your favorite team and absolutely pooping on them week in and week out. Do you guys just not want to give him credit because he's Mr. Irrelevant? I don't care about the story at this point. Focus on the stats, people.
Right. And so I want to talk about that a little bit too, because that play where McCaffrey broke away from Moreau on that seemingly third cut, however it was. Yeah. So the way the Eagles were defending it, the Niners are such a weird team because nobody defends the Niners normally. I don't know a team in the world like that has to spend the Eagles on. So the Niners were running option routes for McCaffrey he's running on he'll run on the slot and pick, go left or right a couple times. They did that earlier in the game. On the few times that they did run those plays, the Eagles chose to go man and double team the running back, Christian McCaffrey. It's insane to think that teams would go out of their way to double team a running back. That's just how much of a threat McCaffrey is in that spot. And then for Brock and him to be aware of the fact that the defense was actually adjusting to them and they got that one-on-one coverage, then they already knew what they were going to run beforehand. And that's Brock is an elite communicator, and I heard this. So I heard the story before, or like a few weeks ago when CMC first got to the San Francisco. There wasn't Jimmy G that was teaching him these plays. He was working off the side with Brock Purdy, and this was before Purdy even got snaps in the offense, before any of that. But Purdy was the one teaching McCaffrey the playbook. He was teaching him plays. He was showing him how to understand. So it just shows that Brock was already. He has a high IQ that's just hard to teach. You can't teach guys to be, that aware of things all the time. And I think it's interesting that as Brock gets older, he does look more athletic. That was mentioned in the broadcast a few more times last game, that he feels like he's more athletic. He looks more athletic. You watched him, he bounced off Bradley Roby, and obviously it could have been because, Roby thought he was going to slide, but you're breaking tackles and you're still pushing, that's tough. Like that's
both those guys that hit him were bigger than him.
Yeah, that was tough to guard. Like Reed was able to get him out of bounds, but it's just, you watch Jalen make those kind of plays and you're like, okay, we expect that out of Jalen Hurts. But when you see Brock Purdy do something like that, that's pretty good. That's surprising. It's an element to the game that what makes Jalen so dangerous, it's making the Niners more dangerous too. And that's something you never would have gotten from Jimmy G, or never did, honestly, at any point. So.
Right. So, yeah, it's so funny to me that nobody wants to give that credit where it's due. When I look at last year when he went out in the NFC Championship game, obviously it was a really weird scenario in and of itself. And then we had our fourth string come in. It's a fourth string quarterback, but regardless, like, he wasn't going to put us in that winning situation. And we knew that. Like, at the very least, what he was going to be able to do was maybe dink and dunk, and we might be able to chew some yards, and then hopefully our defense gets a takeaway. Like, that was the hope at that time. And then he went out. We just didn't have a quarterback the rest of that game. Right. So, it's so interesting to me. But I really, for this game, my MVP wasn't Brock coming out of this game. For what this game was, the MVP for the 49ers was Debo. He showed up with that Black Air Force energy that he always provides at the times he needs to most. And I said to my girlfriend right before the game started, I said, the amount of trash talk that Debo has been saying regarding this game and the Eagles and dating all the way back to the NFC Championship, he better the hell bring an MVP level game. And that was exactly what he did. Over 130 plus yards for three touchdowns, right? Three?
Yeah. I think he had like 190 all-purpose yards. Like, he was doing everything because he ran the ball too. He got those yards too.
He played a very put together game in a very dominant fashion. Like, it was exactly what I needed out of him. He had 2 touchdowns receiving, 1 rushing, and it was a dominating fashion. I mean, it was simply, he brought all that energy from that trash talk and applied it to his game. And that's one thing that I know he's done against Dallas with that trash talk. I know he's done that against the Seahawks. Like, he's done it against the Rams. I feel for the Eagles because they might fall into that ownership category, meaning that Debo owns that team. We'll see if he can do it again and continue to keep that up. But, he was definitely my MVP coming out of this game. CMC was obviously, of course, a exceedingly dominant force. He provides something for our offense that not many teams have in this league. And that definitely can't be overlooked, right? That'll open up the pass game. So, yeah, I was just thrilled to see the team show up from top to bottom. There was no level in this game that I thought the Eagles had us beat. And that's rare to say. It doesn't mean that there isn't an area that the Eagles in general aren't better than us at, but just in this game, we were better than the Eagles in every level.
Right. And, again, a lot of factors that go into this game. Again, there was a reason the Eagles were home underdogs. I didn't want to believe it, but I understood that this was a possibility that this was going to happen. And again, this happens. Every team, goes through losses like this, and plenty of Super Bowl winners have dealt with this before, have gotten beaten down before in a game that was just uncharacteristic for him. Nick Sirianni was playing a little weird. He was coaching, we were down in the third quarter. and it was 4th and 1, and we should have went, or like 4th and 2-ish, and we didn't go for it, even though it was on our own 30. But at that time, you might as well just go for it. And normally that's something Sirianni does, but at that point, I don't know what he was thinking. And and Jalen was holding the ball way too long. And that's a shout out. He's not holding the ball if guys are open. So
Right.
your defenders were doing a really good job staying on our guys, and that's a product of when this is why we missed Dallas Goedert in this game too. With him as a third target, it provides a little bit more creativity. But when everybody knows it's just AJ and Devontae, and you guys have the defenders to make up for it, you can cover AJ and Devontae.
Yeah.
And they're making questionable decisions again. Like they got away from the run. I know it wasn't working that well, but at the same time, it's like you're using a lot of Kenny Gainwell. Should have used DeAndre Swift more.
It became predictable for sure.
Yeah, and especially, and then on the defensive side, there's the Eagles. The Eagles this was something that should have been addressed in the offseason, and that's just something when you invest so much in one spot, you're saying I'm gonna, that's why there's a cap. There's a salary cap. Like you can't have great players at every single position. You can't just sign everybody that you want. I mean, the Eagles did sign Shaq Leonard, right? So that's good news for them in terms of their depth. But the Eagles spent all this money and draft capital on their defensive front. And now it did really well at first, and then it got neutralized. But then you pay big money to 30-year-old corners who are they're sliding. They are now on that downward trajectory. And then your other safety that you traded for, Kevin Byard, is also on the north side of 30, and Reed Blankenship's the only young guy. The Eagles don't have speed, and the Niners have all the speed. And that's when you're saying, hey, Hassan, hey, Josh, you're the two fastest guys, but you already played 140 snaps in the past 2 games. Like it was set up for failure, but now it doesn't. And when they don't really have any curveballs for it. The Eagles system isn't. They were choosing to try to blitz with 5. They could have chose to live with 5 with rushing 4 and then trying to hold you guys on the back end. But the Eagles need to start getting creative when it comes to not creative per se, but just add a few more wrinkles in terms of because for the past 12 weeks we haven't really needed to make any changes. Our defense worked the way it was supposed to. And when you match up against a team like the Niners and you need to throw a curveball, you need to find a curveball to throw. And they didn't have that. And I think now was kind of the wake-up call that the Eagles needed to say, hey, we're going to need to try a few things and practice a few things in game so you guys can get these reps. Or when it comes time to make these changes against the Niners again, we'll be ready. Maybe, that's what makes like teams like the Vikings so interesting when you have a coordinator like Brian Flores, who's like, I'm just going to all out blitz you at random times and you're not even going to be ready for it. Or I'm just going to blitz 3 guys and show you that I'm running all out. And, you gotta be creative in that aspect. So the Eagles signing Shaq Leonard, I don't know what that's going to do. That adds depth. The linebackers got cooked. And if there's one thing Kyle Shanahan is great at exposing is linebackers, and the Eagles were on backups. So it just wasn't good. The Eagles looked worn out. So it was kind of embarrassing in that sense that they just couldn't stop you even if they tried. And they had opportunities, set themselves up. They had you guys in good third down positions, but the Eagles are also the worst team in the NFL at allowing third down conversions. So it just was showing. It just wasn't working the way we should. And frustrating to say the least, but at the same time, not something that can't be corrected. And, at the same time, the offense will start getting healthier. And hopefully, I don't know if we're going to sign Zach Ertz either. I know he's available. Maybe allow that other backup option to, have more. He's played with Hurts before. So I don't know if, Goddard would like that because he's the guy he overtook, all that crap. So, yeah, for this game, for me, it's disappointing, but at the same time, it's like I mentioned in the pod, I already knew that, this was a possibility and I was prepared for it. And I still am not going to change like how I feel about this team because they've beaten great teams and they put themselves in this position to have this letdown game when it should have happened 2 or 3 games ago. So the important thing now is, can they avoid another letdown? Can they bounce back? They got Dallas on the road. They're 3-point underdogs, and Dallas is coming off of an awesome win against a Seahawks team that gave them a good fight. And the Niners get to play the Seahawks, and I don't know how that's going to elevate it. So let's talk real quick about what we think this is going to do. Well, we talked about this a little bit, like how we would feel whether we won or lost. Now the NFC is looking strong. They got the Eagles still at 10-2, then the Niners and Lions and Cowboys all are at 9-3. Like, that's insane. And the Niners are in prime position to basically run the table. The Eagles have this game at Dallas, and then they have a good chance to run the table from there. But the problem is that the Eagles and Niners tie. You guys have the tiebreaker now. So, and if the Cowboys win against the Eagles, that also opens the NFC East wide open, but the Cowboys schedule does get significantly tougher, including a game against the Lions in the last week of the season. And but the Lions have the easiest of the 4 teams. And then I think their toughest game is the Dallas game at the very end of the season, then the rest of it. Unless they play the Packers one more time, but I'm not sure if they do. Because that'll be a fun game. But I just, how are you feeling? Do you think that, based off of your remaining schedule, that you could, end up 14-3?
Yeah, we absolutely could. The toughest game on our schedule is definitely that Ravens matchup on Christmas Day. And that's going to be a dogfight. When I look at the AFC, it's really one team for me right now. I don't think the Chiefs are it this year. They've proved that. I've said that before, and they've proved me wrong. But this time feels a little bit different. So I just don't have that faith in them. I really think it comes down to the Ravens. I don't believe in the Dolphins that much. I like their team. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen them dominate in games that maybe they shouldn't be dominating in. You know what I mean? Where there's a little bit of controversy and there's something they need to kind of get past. It doesn't seem like they break that wall down. So record-wise, they look great, right?
Right.
But I look at their schedule and everything. I'm just like, I'm not sold on them like I am with the Ravens. So I've got that game circled for sure. I think the Niners come out and win that one in any fashion. I'll feel really good going into the playoffs.
For sure.
For me, I was thinking about this a lot this last week. I was thinking, all right, if we beat the Eagles in a dominating fashion or a dogfight, how would I feel? And it ended up being, regardless, to go into the link and get a W in any fashion, I'm okay in any way, shape, or form. I would love to have a first round bye, but in that's kind of a dream scenario, right? But I don't think it's that much of a big deal for us to have to play one more game and just keep rolling if we are rolling at the end of the season like we are now.
Right.
I almost think that we might be better off just playing all the way through. Keeping that momentum, not having a break. I know what the Niners can do when they have a certain amount of rest. I mean, we saw it this year and we saw it this week. But I've got a better feeling knowing that we can go into what was the top team in the NFC into their house and dominate, let alone pick up a win.
You've beaten the top 2 contenders in the NFC. You've beaten the Cowboys.
42 points each time, 19 and 10.
Yes,
we did.
We did better.
Absolutely. You guys put up 19 points in recognition for Debo's amazing game.
Yeah, exactly. We had to. But and again, at the same time, I'm confident in the fact that, especially if the Eagles get the 1 seed, I do think if there is a team in this conference that needs the 1 seed, well, outside of the Detroit Lions, because the Lions definitely need the 1 seed if they want a chance. January golf on the road in the cold weather environment is not going to work. It's not going to work at all. But if the Eagles, given the age of their defense and just the way that they play physical too, but they're worn down, and they've played 2 overtime games this year. They've just played a lot of football, especially in the span of how it is to finish the year. The Eagles are going to get a slight break after Dallas because they play on Monday night, but that technically doesn't mean anything because that means it's another short week going into Sunday. But it's just tough schedules, tough teams. But again, that was the point of this. I kept mentioning this. That's the point of winning early in this gauntlet. we were wondering what the record was going to be and what we'd be happy with in the first place, like what I'd be happy with. And I'd be happy. I would said if we just split split this thing, we're going to be in good position for the playoffs. And at this point, we're heading down that path. We've won 4 out of the 6, and the Seahawks were supposed to be a part of that gauntlet, but they're not. So I'm feeling good, and this game was meant to have room for error, and that was the whole point of it. And I'm going to take it as a bad loss that was already coming. We were due for that. So looking forward, I think we need the 1 seed if we really want a chance, especially if not that I don't think we can't win on the road, but going through the link for the Super Bowl that'd be a tough environment for anybody, especially as things get colder. You never know what the weather's going to be up here. And Santa Clara would be the ideal place for anybody because the weather's usually awesome. And I know Dallas and Detroit really want to have it in the dome. So it would be interesting to see how that works. But Dallas proves to fail in the playoffs every time, whether they're at home or on the road. So
yeah, no, that's almost a fact at this point. As in terms of the rest, I definitely would agree with you in that, like, the Eagles need that first round rest, and that showed this week more than anything. I think it almost showed last week too, because you got a sense of they're getting tired. And you talked about that last week too. You were worried going into it because 3 games in 14 days, that's a lot of football, right?
Yeah.
But definitely one thing I saw was the 49ers played 3 games in 15 days going into this game. And then when I really break it down, if I look at who has the most rest in terms of advantage against their opponents in the league right now, it's the Jets, the Bears, and the Commanders. They all have 12 extra days of rest over their opponents, which is the most in the league.
Interesting.
Now, the opposite end of that, the 49ers have 20 fewer days of rest than their opponents, which is by far the fewest in the league. Like,
I wonder if teams with the most primetime games go through that, like have the least amount of rest because you're playing Monday, you're playing Thursday, like those kind of games. I feel it makes perfect sense that the Niners would be on there.
Well, yeah, what it is an unfortunate mix of primetime games. It means we're going from a Monday night game and then not playing, like, we'll play that Sunday and then we'll play the Thursday. Like, it's
just get a mini bye, but it's still
exactly, like, it's lined us up for a lot of tough games, and one of the tougher stretches was that 3-game stretch where we did get knocked up and injured, and it was just a tough run. But I don't like the NFL is screwing people and teams with their scheduling, similar to the NBA. The NBA is much worse with these back-to-backs, and that's going to be something that we talk about down the road for sure. But yeah, looking at the Eagles, like how old they are on defense, it's not a bad team. It's just a team that needs more rest than others.
Yeah, and again, you don't see a team this year that's had to play a tougher stretch of games than the Eagles had throughout this. And it's not even just this whole 6-game period. It's just the last 3 games, like even the last 4. Like, you're playing the Chiefs, Bills, Niners, and Cowboys. And like that's tough, like, for anybody. If anybody else had that lineup and then swap out their team for the Eagles, like, it's just tough. Like, and to have to do it, you win on Monday night against the Chiefs and then go to Sunday and then play an overtime game, and then you have to come back and try to beat the most physical team in the league that was well rested. That's a tough ask. And again, no excuses. Good teams can win in any kind of situation. That's why I have to have the same level of confidence this weekend, even though the Cowboys have the mini bye. They played on Thursday, so they have the rest advantage. But that'll be a tough one too, because they're going to want it really bad, because this will set the stage for the 1 seed or the NFC East. So who knows what's going to happen? So
it'll be a dogfight for sure. I'm looking forward to the end of this year.
For sure.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the wire. I want to believe in the Lions, but I don't believe in the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that they get out of. Do they go to Dallas for that game?
Yeah, I forget how this is lined up, because so let's say if the Eagles or Niners are the 1 and 2 seed,
they're in Dallas.
So whoever's the 2 seed plays 7, right? Who's the 7th seed right now? Is it the Packers?
It
I'm
might be.
I'm curious now. Let's look at the updated standings based off of right now, I guess, because the Niners have the 2 seed now, right?
That's correct. Wait, no. Yeah,
Detroit.
we have
Okay.
the 2 seed. That's right.
Okay. So it's the Eagles 1, Niners 2, Detroit 3. Whoever's the NFC South is 4th.
Falcons, and then Cowboys.
Cowboys are 5th for the first wild card, and then, gosh, I don't know much of the NFC. Like,
I know.
Seahawks are still in there, right? Because Seahawks are 6-6. So are the Packers.
So yeah, Dallas is the 5th seed right now.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got the Vikings at 6.
Right.
Packers at 7. Yeah.
Oh man, this is gonna be fun. This is the best time of year because all these, yeah.
So the Vikings, the Packers, the Rams, and the Seahawks all have a 6-6 record.
Oh, that wild card spot's gonna be crazy. And there's a realistic shot. Oh, there's a realistic shot that any of those teams can get it. Maybe not the Vikings, though. I don't know about them.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago I could have believed it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. So it'll be interesting. That's gonna be great. But whoever's the 2 seed will get that 7 seed. And realistically, whether it's either one of us, I'm confident that if either one of those, if those teams have to come into either one of our houses to play, like, we'll be fine. The Packers, maybe. The Packers have proven they can beat good teams now. So they beat Detroit and they beat the Chiefs. That can't be ignored. Like, that's pretty tough.
No, that's true.
So even
with that being said, how do you feel going into this game against Cowboys?
I feel I still have the same reservations. Like, I am nervous about the rest advantage. Obviously, at the end of the end of our game, Jalen Hurts did get tested for a concussion. He came out. He was fine. And they asked him about it after the game. They're like, was that just to rally the guys? And Jalen, I love Jalen. His responses are so great to me. He's just like, we weren't done yet. The game wasn't over yet. Like, we got to fight while we still can, even if, you're already down 3 touchdowns. Like, that mentality that we have, that's the one thing I will always respect in Jalen, and that's what makes him so cool, is his ability to just say, it's not over yet. And so long as I'm there will always be a chance. And that's the kind of mindset you're going to have in this game. The Cowboys are going to be hungry. They're going to want payback. They feel like they got cheated out of last game on the road. And, the Eagles had a good chance to get the common opponent win here, but now I think we still do have that advantage so long as we beat, like, the Cardinals. And if the Cowboys beat the Bills moving forward, that'll be an interesting matchup to watch out too. But the Cowboys do have the toughest schedule of the 3 of us, at least. Because I think they play, I forget who they play, but they start actually playing legitimate teams that are above 500. So that'll make things interesting. So they really need this Eagles game. If the Eagles win, the NFC East starts. That's as simple as that.
What's up? They play you guys, then they play the Bills, and then they play the Dolphins, then they play the Lions, and then they finish with the Commanders. And
there you go. So the Commanders is the easy one, but
3 of those games are away.
There you go, and that'll seal the deal for them. That's why I don't think they're going to secure the 1 seed, even if they do beat the Eagles.
Yeah,
because one of those games I could see them faltering, and if they don't, better, more power to them. They'll be considered a contender, but they can still get beat by the Niners or the Eagles. The Niners,
I think they lose to the Bills right now.
That'd be really cool if they did. I mean, if Josh Allen has another heroic game, that'll be, that defense is starting to become overrated now. Like, the Eagles defense, everybody already knew was trash, but the Cowboys defense was talked about as one of the class of the NFC. And whenever they play a good team, they're not. So even and Seahawks included, the Seahawks are a 500 team now, and they got 35 on them. So that's not. But that also vaults Dak into the MVP conversation in that sense, in the sense of, like, everyone thought that the Cowboys system was going to be defense is going to protect Dak, so then Dak can carry. So Dak doesn't have to carry, but Dak has had to carry this team, and he's showing that he can. So that's the hype, but at the same time, you're beating tomato cans. You need to continue to beat better teams, and this will be, if Dak runs the table, there is a legitimate chance that he wins MVP. And
absolutely.
So in terms of at this stage, it's Brock versus Dak at this point. And if he shows out against the Eagles this week, they're going to favor the guy with the star on his head. Like, they're going to favor him in that conversation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as they should, honestly. For me, as passionate as I got about that MVP conversation. It's not the end of the world for me if Brock doesn't get MVP or CMC doesn't get MVP. If they finish in the running for it, that'll matter for me. The goal for this team, and that's showing towards the fan base and the rest of the league, is something so much larger than that. And that's getting to that Super Bowl game and finishing a job that has started years ago and we've been itching to get back to. So,
No, for sure. And yeah, so this is why the NFL is so great. And I think it's weird. Like, there's been a lot of talk, like there's been a lot of mediocrity in the NFL, and I can understand that Tom Brady, said that to Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons responded to Tom saying that, but I don't disagree. There isn't like the same high level elite talent that we had, but every league goes through those kind of stretches, and in the next couple of years, it's going to be the top 5 QBs are literally going to be, Jalen, Brock, Mahomes. Like, they're gonna be a new tier, and they're gonna start setting records on their own and doing things that are gonna change the narrative of how elite the NFL is. So moving forward, I think that's just something to look out for. This conversation, the MVP conversation, is, Brock will have so much to prove. He still has to prove stuff to people, even though the samples just don't see it. And it works the same way with Jalen too. Like, Jalen had an MVP caliber year last year, and he's kind of fallen off a little in that sense. It's not the same level of production. So now all Brock has to do is continue to sustain. And if he has his guys, it's shown that he can. So that'll be interesting to see moving forward. Did you have any final takeaways from the weekend, from the game? Anything you wanted to add in terms of, how you experienced it, anything like that?
I'm just thrilled to have the first game on the behind the back,
yes,
scoreboard here. So happy about that. It was a good dub. It just was not the game I was expecting, at least at the magnitude I was expecting. I think I wanted a little bit more out of Philly, and I'm hoping that when we match up in the NFC Championship, that we get that top dog, absolute dog fight of a game.
And the same thing, like, you guys, the Niners will never be fully healthy, especially because, Hufanga is gone. So that will always be a thing. But the Eagles have a chance to get healthier. And I know that the team was not at 100%. They're worn down. There's no excuse, but I was mentally preparing for a letdown game. And I just know that if you get the Eagles in the playoffs, that you will get the best game from them. And that would be more fun. That'll be fun to see if that actually happens. I will stand by it. I still think it will be the Niners and the Eagles. Regardless of how the seeding goes, I still think when it comes to the NFC, it's going to be the Niners or Eagles. So
agreed.
All right, so we'll hop off football. So as I jokingly introed at the beginning of this pod, we will transfer over to the NBA, where the first official in-season elimination rounds will be played tonight. I don't know if one's going right now for the other side, but I know the Kings, the only team we really care about, is playing here at 7 o'clock. So they play against the New Orleans Pelicans, but the New Orleans Pelicans have had our number this year. So what do you think about this matchup, Ben, as the Pelicans come into Sacramento, because Sacramento did their job and swept their division, or their group, I should say, and after they had an electric game against Golden State last week. So and the Kings are coming off of a really good win against the Denver Nuggets. So, and New Orleans just lost, correct? They lost to the Mavericks, or what was their last name?
They lost to
the Jazz.
The Jazz, right? Yeah.
The Jazz. So, obviously, matchup-wise, Zion has been cooking this team. Do you think he will be the biggest difference today?
That's a tough question, because it can be Brandon Ingram, it can be Zion. I think the player that we struggle with the most in this matchup is proven to be Zion, more times than not. When I look at the last two matchups against the Pelicans, I look at the first one, we got obliterated from the first quarter on. It was at no point, it didn't feel like we were going to have a game. It didn't feel like we were going to get back in it. It was really ugly. The second time around, we didn't have Keegan for that matchup, as you pointed out earlier. And Foxy had a 26-point game, which for him this season is not a good game. And I love that we can say that.
Right.
But where I do find my confidence in this matchup, and in this game rather, not necessarily in the matchup, but in this game, is this is an in-season tournament game, which in all of our in-season games, regardless of what has happened in the games leading up to them, we've won every single one of those games. And we faced some adversity, at least in one of them, when we were down 24 points against the Warriors and came back and won that game. And I feel like the Kings, having had that 7-game playoff series last year against the Warriors, with as much firepower that both teams had and as much weight as that series carried, meaning there were so many people watching. It's been 17 years since that fan base has screamed at a playoff game. Like there was a lot of factors playing that, right? They've now played those at least some games where there's a lot riding on them. And so for this game, it is an elimination game, and the last technical elimination game that the Kings played, they didn't win. I feel like they're going to bring their best game that they possibly can. And I think it's going to take the same from the Pelicans to beat them this time around. I definitely want to see Domas do better. He was playing really well for about a week and a half. He was towards the end of Foxy's injury while he was still out. Those last 2 games, he started playing a lot more aggressive, being a lot more of that dominant, all NBA player that we all expect him and want him to be. And then within the last week or so, he's kind of taken that step back. He's still running the offense in a lot of ways, and it's still moving through him, but you're not seeing him get to the rim as dominantly as he has, even in matchups that favor him. And when he does get to that rim, he seems like he's missing layups right now.
Yeah.
It seems like he's a little off. And so I'm looking for him to be a little more effective, at least on the defensive end. I know he's not defensive minded, but he can hold his own against Zion. I know he can.
Right. And the other big to look out for is Jonas Valanciunas, his Sabonis' teammate from the European team, or whatever, where they hail from. But
yeah,
that has been the matchup of when it's physical on physical, it's tough. And this is a game where I really wish we had Alex Len, because his level of physicality really matches. Although JaVale against the Nuggets did a very good job of making his presence known and playing with high energy. If we get that version of JaVale off the bench, we will do a really good job of maintaining with those non-Domas minutes. Having Keegan back is important. I think last game he really needed to find his groove and still try to be aggressive, and he started finding his rhythm into the third quarter. We're going to need a huge Malik Monk game again if we want a real chance. Malik shows up in these spots, and he always does well. And we need Fox to play at an MVP level, and it's hard because they're going to put big guys on him. And it's at home, though, so this will be, at home. We do get good calls, so I'm interested to see how that works, because last game against the Nuggets, that was also at home, but Foxy didn't really get those calls, and he needs to just stay aggressive, and defensively he always will do his job. That I'm appreciative of. What's gonna matter to me is gonna be defense and how we finish out possessions. We can't give up offensive rebounds. We need to hit our threes. It's gonna be tough. In these kind of games, every point matters. But I do agree that the experience that the Kings have generated over the past couple, over the playoff series and during this in-season tournament, we always seem to show up and play our best basketball in the in-season tournament. And even when we were down 24 to the Warriors, what bugged me about that is we had so many opportunities when I was watching. It was just we were fine. It just wasn't bouncing our way. It wasn't going our way.
Falling. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we were being frustrating to the Warriors. They were starting to get in their own head. Draymond ruined the whole momentum by being himself.
He was the best player on the Kings for a minute there.
Yeah, exactly. So he swung that momentum, and we're starting to see the Warriors really have an existential crisis with their old players, and how that's all going to work out, it remains to be seen. But the Pelicans are really good. I respect the heck out of Brandon Ingram. I think he's a good player when he's not, when he's healthy. CJ McCollum being back he could hurt us. So hopefully Fox has to do a good job of getting pressure on him. And Keegan needs to do a really good job on matching up with Brandon. I think he's going to match up with Brandon. Then they're going to try and put HB on Zion for stretches, and I don't know how that's going to work out. So Zion's going to be the guy. If we can try and mix up coverages, I'm sure Mike and Jordy have something planned up for that matchup. And again, we only lost by 5 last time, so I think they were starting to figure out bits and pieces. And they're not. Chris Duarte will also not be playing, so that's something to look out for too. He's a good, big physical guard, so we know we're going to need good minutes from Keon. Davion should be back too, but I don't know about going undersized in this game with Malik already on there too. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, one area that I feel like we could almost benefit from is CJ McCollum being back. Mm-hmm. We've done really well this season to this point with guarding anybody who's at a guard position other than Steph Curry. But it's shown that, our guards will bring the toughness on both ends of the court, and we've seen that. And so that's one thing, like CJ is going to take touches away from Zion and away from Brandon Ingram, right? Just as Brandon Ingram and Zion are going to take touches away from each other. It's just kind of one of those situations when you have really good players, it's just about distributing the ball. So I look at the Pelicans, and since CJ came back, he's been playing pretty well. He put up like 18 points and then he put up like 20 in the last 2 games that he came back, since he came back. And so I view it as he feels like he's on a roll. The Pelicans probably feel like he's back and he's good to go. So they're going to really incorporate him into that offense. And if that's the case, and we can continue to play the same level that we've been playing against these guards, I think that that'll work to our advantage, especially if we can capitalize on defensive rebounds. Now that's one area that, especially with Zion being down there, like we got to be hungry to get that defensive rebound, to get any loose ball, any 50-50. You can't view it as a 50-50. You got to view it as it's ours. Like that's really where you got to win these tough, gritty games where you're not necessarily favored, like even I think we are favored in this one.
I think we are too. Yeah.
But like for us matchup wise, it doesn't feel like we're necessarily favored, right?
Yeah. We struggle against these longer teams, but we did a really good job against a team like Minnesota. And that, so it shows that if we, again, foul trouble is going to be the key in this game too. If we can play the aggressor, one thing I've noticed during these in-season tournament games is we go aggressive to start these games. Like it just seems like when that court is colored, they know exactly what they have to do and they got to go for it. And they just have to play aggressively, and hopefully we can draw some early fouls. Hopefully, again, we just need to establish rhythm early. If we force them to have to try and come back on us, and then we can go through our ups and downs that we normally do, I just think that if the Kings play from ahead, it'll be a lot easier. If we struggle and start falling a little far behind and try to have to work our way back against this team, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, definitely agreed. So for this one, do you think it's more crucial that Fox pops off, or that Domas is more our key to win? Like, which one would you view needs to play their best game if one had to play better than the other?
If one had to play better than the other, I would say Fox needs to go off with the scoring. And I know it's easy to say, but when he's consistently scoring and just, in a rhythm the whole time, it's so hard to stop. And one thing I'm really looking at is our bench. Our bench has done such a great job this year of maintaining runs for us. And this team is really at its best when everybody gets involved. So if Kevin can hit a few threes, Keegan hits a few shots, then Malik comes in, he's out here hitting a few shots, and JaVale's getting a good block. Sasha comes in, hits a shot. If we can just establish a rhythm as a team, because this is a good defensive team. They got a lot of long guys who are able to defend very well. So it'll be very important to see how this kind of turns out. If we can just do exactly what we did against Denver and play as a team and just have everybody involved, there's a great chance we'll win this game.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And I think that going back to your point, like we play these in-season tournament games so aggressively and really well put together. I think that we have a good shot at it. I really do. So definitely looking forward to that. That's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully we're talking about going to Vegas here in a week, because I don't know when those games start, but I'm pretty sure it rolls into them pretty soon.
So we got 2 tonight. So our game is one of them, and I think Indy and Boston play tonight. I forget exactly the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's one from the East Coast. It's one from the East, one from the West, and then I know then there's 2 games tomorrow. So that's how it's gonna go. Whoever wins these games will go to Vegas. But what are the matchups again?
So tonight is Pacers and Celtics, and then tomorrow is Knicks Bucks, and then Suns Lakers.
Suns Lakers. Okay, so let's play a little hypothetical. Who would you want to play, Suns or Lakers?
Oh man,
that's tough, huh?
Honestly, give me either one, because I feel like we would match up really well. If I had to choose, I want the Lakers.
I want the Lakers too.
Just to eliminate them. Like, that would be such a fun feeling, you know?
And we have their number.
Yeah, and I feel like in terms of like getting a good story and talk about bringing a rivalry into this, you know, in-season tournament, there's no other real rivalries at least on the East Coast there that are involved in the in-season tournament still. So this is like the last real rivalry left. So I almost want it to play out that way, because I think that would be like the most viewed game.
Perfect. And then so let's go for the East. So I'm curious, do you want I texted this yesterday because I wanted to speak it into existence. How awesome would it be if the first in-season tournament final was Indianapolis versus the Kings, with the whole trade drama, everything that comes with it? Tyrese versus Fox, Domas playing Indy. How would you feel about that matchup?
Bro, the headlines would just be insane. But it would be fun for a few reasons. The first one is just it solidifies that win-win trade, like officially. Like it would officially put to bed that this team over that team was better off in whatever scenario. Like,
agreed.
We need to all get past that, because this was as even of a trade that we've ever seen, and I think it's history. Still more even than Trey and Luka on draft night. I really do. Yeah. And I think both of those were win-win, but when I look at it, I'm like, why did Atlanta move on from Luka? Because Luka seems to be proving he's more of a franchise player when he's not crying, but than Trey. But
I love that.
No, that would be an awesome headline. And I think the matchup just between Hallie and Fox, I want Fox to destroy Hallie. I really do. I love Hallie, but
yeah, I mean, they struggled. Have they beaten us since the trade?
They beat us.
Done it once, right?
They beat us one time, and I remember like Buddy Hield posted like "light the beam" or something like that.
He totally did
some
that
corny post. I was like, "Come on, dude! You had like 4 points."
We cooked them one of the matchups too.
We beat them like 20-something points. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So let's put it. So would that be your preferred matchup in the East, or who do you think will come out of the East, if you're being realistic?
So all right. There's 2 questions and there's 2 answers there. I would say my preferred matchup is, I would love to see that Pacers and Kings.
Yeah.
Personally, I think that's probably my top one. Where I think it goes, if we make it all the way, I think we're playing the Celtics, because I want to pick the Celtics over the Bucks right now. And I think Giannis would have a big night, but I look at the Celtics and I look at what they're doing on the defensive and the offensive end, and it's dominating, man. They're a really, really good team right now, and they're not one to be messed with by any stretch. I mean, they're first in the East for a reason.
Yeah, and the Bucks have been a little inconsistent. Their defense has not worked the way they thought it was going to when the Dame trade, and Dame's been a little inconsistent, still trying to find that groove.
Yeah.
And I would like the matchup better. I think it'd be a more fun, even matchup versus Boston. I think we just match up better versus them. But again, personally, Indy for sure. And in the West, we definitely want the Lakers. So this is gonna be fun. Like, hopefully hopefully the Kings give us that chance. And hey, if they don't, they made it this far, and we got to say we beat the Warriors in the process so far. So I think so. Now that we're starting to come to the finale of all of this, how was, what did you think of the first, NBA in-season tournament? Like, what did you like? What did you not like? Is there something you think you would, change from this?
I was really skeptical going into it, to be honest with you. My main skepticism came from, I just don't know how well it's going to work. Our guy's going to get super injured. Like, how is it going to shake down? When I look at how this first one has played out, when I look at just how fun these matchups have been, looking at these in-season games, the only thing I have to bash on is just the court designs. I feel like they could be a lot better in terms of, you want to separate how it looks on a TV. The way you have it in terms of how that court looks, it's not it. The courts, just a lot of them are a miss for me.
And I understood the design. So the design I didn't understand at first, but like, so the whole stripe in the middle is like the strip on the way to Vegas and stuff like that. So like when they mentioned that, I was like, okay, that makes way more sense. But I agree, because certain courts look great, especially even on TV, like the Kings court. Mm-hmm. That sounds biased, but like, I love the gray on the blue. But then you go to a couple of the other ones, and like, let's take Miami for example. I'm not going to hate on it, but like, it's the bright red and the black. It just felt too much at times, and even I think Denver's court was a little weird too. I kind of like those neutral style courts. Like Minnesota's was good. I liked Minnesota's too, and a lot of the jersey combos that come from this were also very, very cool. I wonder if that's something they're going to tweak, the design itself. Maybe they try to do, different designs every year, just slightly different. I think in terms of the way this works was awesome. I don't remember. I think I was listening to Bill Simmons' podcast, and he's like, I don't think I've ever cared more about November basketball ever in my life. It's
exactly.
Yeah. It created a playoff like atmosphere. Game, like statistically, it was the case too. Like most the regular NBA season games that were played in November, the average margin of victory was about 12 points. And then when it was an in-season tournament game, the average margin of victory was 6. So it really narrows it down, because guys care about this.
And the other cool thing about it too is, let's put a really, really, really unfortunate scenario out here. And that's that the Kings missed the playoffs last year. Okay. We're looking at year 18 without the playoffs. But we have this in-season tournament, and it's proved to be super fun, super exhilarating, and really upbeat. Like, everything's been really close, like you were saying, the margin of victory, right? And so it brings that playoff atmosphere to a city that maybe hasn't seen it in 18 years, if that were the case, right? But you look at a team like Detroit, you look at another team like the Hornets, who just haven't quite made it to that playoff atmosphere in a little bit, and they're able to get these games that just have a little more weight to them and feel a little bit more fun. And I'm sure for that fan base and for that city, that's got to be something, right? It's got to have some weight to it.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I also think this benefits teams who do make the playoffs, and it also benefits these young teams who are growing, because like you mentioned, those fan bases, on the lower tier, they're not going to see those playoffs just yet. And and for players, it's really hard. How do you build reps in the playoffs without getting there? So having the in-season tournament here, I think that's only going to improve the way players play, the way teams play. These young guys are going to see a level that they're just not used to. And I think that's, agreed. It's super beneficial. I think one thing I would do, and Bill Simmons was talking about this too. He's like, I would add an extra game just so it would even out some of these tiebreakers and have a more clear winner. And I like the point differential thing. I think fans, like when we were watching the early games, fans were really understanding what was going on. They're like, why are they scoring up 20? And I liked the whole idea of, hey, if you lose by, like the Kings situation, if we lost by 10, we still would have moved on. And it adds a second layer of how teams coach too, because you could be the Warriors, they could have been up 10 and they still have to play Steph in the last minute or two if they want to have these games. So it keeps the stars on the floor. And, to the chagrin of much of the coaches who don't want to do that, but it creates pressure. And it was so cool. It was so cool to see. Like, I thought it was a huge success just for the group stages. So I'm interested to see how these knockout rounds go.
Yeah. And I didn't get to go to any of the in-season tournament games. I wanted to for sure. But I did know a couple people that went to the Warriors game, and they were just talking about what that atmosphere was like. And they were like, you want to talk about a playoff atmosphere in November, like that was it for sure. Like, just walking into the arena, you felt like this was a different night. Obviously that probably had something to do with the fact we were playing the Warriors, and there's a legit rivalry there now. And that, that's awesome. I love that. So that's fun. That's really good for the league. That's really good for the Kings. That's good for the Warriors to have a new rival. Like, It's going to be good going forward. But yeah, to bring that kind of an atmosphere in November, it just feels right. It adds 2 levels to the season. That's like there's this thing at the beginning of the season that we're going to work really hard at, and then whether we win or lose, we gotta figure some stuff out in the middle here, and then get to the next big goal, the real big goal, and that's getting to the playoffs, getting to the finals,
Right.
taking that big boy home.
And it was cool because like they did interviews with some of the veterans that were playing, right? Like I think they did one with Dame for example, and he's like, oh yeah, like these games matter because there are guys on my team who clearly don't make as much as I do. And for me to not play as hard when I could give them an opportunity to make, to get a paycheck that actually means something to them, like these guys are playing for each other. And you get to, again, you're learning a playoff atmosphere. And at the same time, like, I just loved, like they mentioned that for the Kings versus Warriors game, out of the entire group stage games that were played, that was the most watched one. So that emphasizes how much people like watching the Kings and the Warriors play each other on the
It's a fun
national stage.
matchup, man.
It was the best matchup of the playoffs. I don't care what anyone says. Like that first round series was a classic, and I think, and again, it shows that it helps the Kings players as well as the fans. It very much shows like we can beat this team, and to do it in the in-season tournament game where at times the Warriors were like, dang, I wish we were up 20. We probably could have played this differently if it was just a regular game, but it's not. And that's what makes it fun. So
yeah, it was so interesting in that Warriors game to feel that hope of, we're only down 20. We only got to get back 9 points and we move on. It was like, It felt wrong, but it was like, no, I'm taking this victory because, the Kings have struggled against the Warriors since game 7. So I'll take that victory. And then we're down 8 and we're like, yes, we're going to win this thing. And then we actually won it. And we're like, holy shit, we won.
Yeah, and the fashion, that was crazy.
Yeah, it was just a plethora of emotions, and it was really fun to see. So if there was like one thing that you could change with the in-season, is there anything?
I would say just maybe add an extra game, maybe even 2.
Yeah.
Like I think having these games, maybe just keep it 5, but because there was times where I'm like, okay, there's teams playing just 3 regular season games. I do love the fact that it counts for a regular season game too.
I do too.
Because it's not something separate. It's a part of the season, and these games matter. I also think that's why we're seeing like parity in the records too, because they're matching up against teams they normally wouldn't. Some of them are within the division, but others were just within the conference, and it just made things way more intense, knowing that we could match up with any one of those teams in the playoffs. Like we got good games against the Thunder, we got good games against the Wolves, and we got the Warriors. Those are all 3 teams that we could play in the playoffs, and we got to test that, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, definitely agreed. So, any final thoughts on tonight's game?
I'm just excited to see what the atmosphere is like. This is an elimination game, so this is cool. Like in the regular season, it just doesn't feel normal. And I think this is going to show a lot, especially with the Kings on the national stage. People get Indy on the other side, like Indy Boston's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Like I already know it. Even if it's not like the result we're hoping for, I think this was a success. Like shout out Adam Silver for creating something that was just that cool, and the idea was smart, and players bought in. I really love the way all these guys bought in, and tonight I just hope the Kings step up and flex their muscles a bit and just show that they are capable of winning these tough games, because if we position ourselves, we can at least come out of the West and give ourselves a real fighting chance to win this thing.
Definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely a W for the NBA, and it's a W for fan bases all around the league, especially, in my opinion, especially for those that haven't seen the playoffs in X amount of years. It's fun to have that energy, that different energy than just a normal regular season for them. So
yeah,
big W on the league.
Even if they lose, like you're at least in that environment, and that's so much fun to be. Like I remember how cool it was being a part of that playoff atmosphere for the first time as a Kings fan, and it's a memory that's just hard, and like I'll never forget it.
Dude, like, yeah, as diehard of a fan as I've been, for my entire life, I couldn't remember the last time the Kings were in the playoffs. I had this core memory engraved in my mind from Kevin Martin's game winner in the last Sacramento Kings playoff game before last year. And I like always will remember that, but I can't remember like the actual playoffs themselves.
Right.
And so last year, when we made the playoffs, when it was like when we clinched in Portland, I shed one tear and I was like, all right, that was cool. Like we clinched, we're there. But then, dude, when that team took the court and they did the whole like TV breakdown and they showed the fans like the whole announcement and everything, and just seeing and feeling that atmosphere through the television.
Unbelievable.
It didn't feel like you were feeling it through the television. It felt like 17 years of pure pain just going out the window, and you just felt this almost like renewed wave over the organization, over the fan base, over everything. And it really did. It brought me to tears, like I will always remember that day, and getting those first 2 wins was like, holy crap, we're going to sweep the Warriors. And obviously that didn't happen. Right. But that's the emotion that playoff series brought to Kings fans, but especially to me.
Yeah. And again, because some teams get there and they do get swept. Like that's the reality. Right. Like in teams like that are in our position who aren't there for a while, they go in and they get swept. And
it was a legit thing. We thought it might happen.
Yeah. And when we got those first 2, we're like, oh my God, we might actually do it. But the fact that we got the first one in general, I think the fact that we went 1 for 1 at the time was just like everything encapsulated all at once, the emotion, and then making it to Game 7 was awesome. And this year, hopefully the Kings can do that in the playoffs. But again, they're getting these games that will continue to test their mettle for the important games moving forward. And in-season tournament was great. So,
yep, definitely.
All right, guys. So this was episode 20 of the Behind the Back podcast. We love what we've been doing with you guys. This has been so much fun for us. So thank you guys. And again, now that we're on YouTube, please give us a shout out, give us a comment, subscribe, like, do all that fun stuff. And if you listen to it on the audio, that's also great too. We love to have anybody out here checking us out who like what we do. And again, we love to hear any comments that you guys have. You can send us comments on YouTube, or you can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on any one of our social media platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook, all that fun jam. We'll have our links to everything in those descriptions anyway, as well as the description in the episodes for the audio listeners out there. So if you want to check us out on YouTube, we will post our YouTube channel below. So please give us a follow. Let us know what's up. But I'm Marcos Conan-Negron, and beside me here is
Benny the Jet. Bang, bang, Niner gang.
Congrats on the win, my dude. Will be more to come for sure, and I'm really excited for, what we can get for football and basketball. This is going to be lit, dude. All right, guys.
Peace.